We are counting down to the historic launch of Axiom-2, the second private mission to the International Space Station. In this exclusive video, we have an inspiring opportunity to ask the Axiom-2 crew members live questions on our Twitch stream and take you on an exhilarating journey through a step-by-step guide unraveling the intricate process of Falcon 9 launching and ISS docking. I'm Marvin Marshall, and together we'll dive into the launch of Axiom-2 right here on the Space Report News. Axiom-2 will consist of 63-year-old Peggy Whitson as commander, 64-year-old John Schuffner, 31-year-old Ali Akinari, and 33-year-old Rayani Barwani. They will spend a total of 10 days in orbit representing 2 nations. So, what can we expect on launch day? After a brief introduction, the crew of 4 will exit the Falcon support building's suit-up room with vehicles waiting to take them about 2,000 feet up the road to the pad. These vehicles are equipped with AC that plugs into their suits to help keep them cool during the drive. Once the Axiom-2 crew is buckled in and all hooked up, they will take the ride over to the historic Pad 39A. Pad 39A is where the Saturn V took all the Apollo missions to the moon and launched the space shuttles after the Saturn V program ended. SpaceX now exclusively leases these pads out for their launches. The crew will ride the original elevators that were used for the space shuttle program up to the 255-foot level in the tower. The crew will then need to use a set of stairs to climb an additional 10 feet, as the Falcon 9 rocket is slightly taller than the space shuttle was back in the day. At the 265-foot level, the crew will enter the crew access arm, very similar to the ones we use to board airplanes, and make their way to the Crew Dragon spacecraft. It allows the crew to board the spacecraft without having to climb a ladder all the way up the launch tower. Now that would be exhausting. The crew will then ingress the spacecraft and begin the launch countdown. The Crew Dragon spacecraft is a capsule that is designed to carry astronauts to the International Space Station. The spacecraft is equipped with a variety of life support systems, a bathroom, a room for all 4 to sleep en route, as well as docking systems that allow it to dock to the International Space Station. Once the crew is inside the Crew Dragon spacecraft, they will perform a variety of checks and procedures to ensure that everything is ready for launch, which takes roughly 2 hours. This includes testing the communication systems, verifying the life support systems, and ensuring that all the spacecraft systems are functioning properly. The crew will also strap themselves into their seats and secure their harnesses in preparation for the intense acceleration that they will experience during launch. As the countdown reaches T-minus 0 seconds, the Falcon 9's 9 Merlin engines will ignite, generating a massive thrust that will lift the spacecraft off the launch pad, marking the start of the second private mission to the space station for Axiom and SpaceX. The rocket will ascend through Earth's atmospheres, rapidly gaining speed and altitude. Shortly after liftoff, the rocket will begin a series of maneuvers to control its trajectory and align itself with the path to the International Space Station. Once the Falcon 9 rocket reaches a certain point in its ascent, the first stage engines will shut down and separate from the upper stage, which will continue to carry the Dragon spacecraft and crew upward. The first stage will perform a series of burns and maneuvers to execute a controlled descent back to Earth for a landing on a drone ship. Meanwhile, the second stage will continue propelling the spacecraft and crew towards its destination, the International Space Station. After reaching orbit in less than 10 minutes, the Crew Dragon spacecraft will separate from the second stage, sending Axiom-2 on its way. The spacecraft will then begin a series of precise engine burns to raise its orbit and gradually approach the International Space Station. These maneuvers are carefully calculated to ensure a safe and accurate rendezvous with the space station. This trip will take roughly 16 hours as it's planned right now, where the crew will have some time to rest and acclimate to the zero-G environment. Once Crew Dragon and the spacecraft is in close proximity to the International Space Station, it'll perform a series of final approach maneuvers. This involves carefully aligning the spacecraft with the docking port on the space station and moving in slowly to make a nice soft capture. The spacecraft's docking system will engage with the docking port, creating an airtight seal between the two vehicles. After the docking is complete, the crew will wait for the pressure and atmosphere inside the spacecraft and the space station to equalize. Once this is achieved, the hatch between the spacecraft and the space station will be opened, allowing the crew to enter the International Space Station. The Axiom-2 crew will then be greeted by the resident astronauts and begin their stay aboard the orbiting laboratory. Welcome to the International Space Station. I hope that gives you a better understanding into the process of flying a private astronaut mission to the International Space Station. On Tuesday, May 16th, Axiom granted us access to an all-crew conference down in Florida. We were fortunate enough to have 2 of our questions answered by the crew. I'd like to give a big shout out to 2 of our viewers on Twitch for creating these amazing questions. We started out with a question about sleep in space.
We have a question from Marvin Marshall at Space Report News. What is your sleep schedule like here on Earth leading up to your launch? And what will your sleep schedule be like aboard the ISS?
Actually, our sleep schedule so far has been pretty close to normal. Our launch time is 5:30 in the afternoon. 5:37, I believe. I don't remember the seconds, but we'll know on Sunday. But anyway, we are going to shift a little bit later, so we're going to get up a little bit later on some of the days as we lead up to the mission. However, we don't want to shift too much because on orbit we'll be on GMT time and wake up will be at 0600 GMT time, so that'll be backwards the other way. So we've got some time available when we're in free flight on the Dragon that we'll be trying to get a little sleep. I imagine we'll be just a tiny bit excited, but we'll be trying to get some sleep then too.
So, since they'll be launching at 5:37 p.m., they will shift their wake-up times just a little later in the day so they aren't tired in the evening on launch day. Once aboard the space station, their new wake-up times will be at midnight Eastern time, so they don't want to shift wake-up for launch by too much. We then followed it up with an inspirational question about the first time the astronauts knew that they wanted to dedicate their lives to this goal of going to space. Check this out.
Thank you, Peggy. Next question, Marvin Marshall. Follow-up for questions for all 4 astronauts. When was the first time each of you looked up at the stars and dedicated yourself to achieving the goal of going to space to advance life here on Earth? We'll start with John. I'm going to start with John.
Let's go.
I know precisely when that was. I was 8 years old, and the space race had just begun in earnest, and that was the biggest thing in the news. And it was so easy for 8-year-olds, or anyone actually, to fall in love with space. We formed a young astronauts club in the small town of Middlesboro, Kentucky, where I grew up, and that was our weekend fun, tending to train as Gemini pilots. So, and it never left me. So here I am.
Oh my God.
For me, in rural Iowa, looking up at the stars and being able to see the Milky Way. I've always loved.
Let's go, Bill. Welcome
the
aboard.
Idea of space and what's out there. I think it became serious when I watched Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin walk on the moon. I thought, wow, cool job. I want to do this. But I was a farm kid and I didn't really know that would ever be anything realistic for me. But it was always part of me growing up, and even in my poetry, there's mentions of space all the time. When I graduated from high school, that was the year that NASA selected the first female astronauts. And so that's when it went from being a dream into a goal. And so I set my mind to it and ended up eventually making it. It was a long process, but I made it.
Well, for me, I grew up in a small town in Saudi Arabia, but with big dreams. And at night, we have beautiful stars layout, and that what got me into flying and being passionate about airplanes and flying and just the stars in general. And I think as I was training with the U.S. Air Force, I remember on one weekend, we flew our small T6 and landed in Arlington Airfield, and we had the chance to visit Houston Space Center, Houston, and meet with a couple of astronauts. And I think that was the moment that triggered me to increase my interest in space and look forward to the first opportunity that I actually can be an astronaut and meet my dream.
For me, I'd say space has developed as a passion. I had the chance to go with the crew on an expeditionary trip. And I remember one night we were supposed to wake up a little bit early to watch the ISS fly over. To me, that was the moment that made me realize why I'm here and why I am representing those dreams. Space is full of exploration, and it's I would say it's a dream that developed with me along this journey, and I'm very happy to be going to space now and to that International Space Station.
You just fell in her lap.
Who can imagine? Yeah.
Wow. What an inspirational answer from all 4 crew members. I cannot wait to follow along with Axiom-2 as the launch date gets closer and closer. Follow us on Twitter at Space Report News, streaming live on Twitch at You Got Any Grapes, and for a fully autonomous rocket launch and event schedule, go to thespacereportnews.com. We'll be uploading at least 1 video per week here on YouTube, so make sure you are subscribed and have that notification bell on. Your thumbs up and comments on these videos will help the Space Report News grow. My name is Marvin Marshall with the Space Report News, signing off. Until next time.